In today's video, we have three big stories, starting with Marco Rubio and his ability to school mainstream media left and right. Secondly, Jeanine Pirro made a shocking announcement about the crime in Washington, D.C. And finally, states are sending their National Guard troops to D.C. So in this video, we'll show you what both sides are saying and give you the bottom line.
Well, first of all, the Russians are already facing very severe consequences. There's not a single sanction that's been lifted. And not one. I mean, they're facing all the same sanctions that have been in place today. All the American support continues for Ukraine. And ultimately, look, if we're not going to be able to reach an agreement here at any point, then there are going to be consequences. Not only the consequences of the war continuing, but the consequences of all those sanctions continuing and potentially new sanctions on top of it as well. But what we're trying to do right now is end the war. And in order to end the war, you've got to give every opportunity that exists. You have to be open to any opportunity that exists to bring it about. And here's the thing to remind everybody, and when the president says this is not our war, but let's be frank, this is not our war. The United States is not in a war. Ukraine is in a war, and we've been supporting Ukraine. We happen to be in the role of the only country in the world, with the only leader in the world, that can actually bring Putin to a table to even discuss these things. Now, the president has traveled, all the way to Alaska, all the way back, has dedicated months and months of work, him, our entire team on this matter, because we want to see an end to the war. But if tomorrow the war continues, life in America will not be fundamentally altered. So I think that what we have to understand is that this has been a priority for this president because he wants to promote peace. He wants to promote the end of a war. And I think we should be happy that we have a president that's trying to promote peace and bring a war to an end.
Okay, so what you're going to see throughout this video is Marco Rubio schooling these mainstream media hosts. He has to give them a lesson in foreign policy negotiations. And quite frankly, I find it disrespectful that you would invite the Secretary of the State Department on and ask stupid questions. You guys are going to see this. It's really ridiculous. You would think they would ask him a more thought-provoking question that would engage a higher level of intellect and conversation regarding this issue, but that's not what the mainstream media is interested in. They're interested in getting a clickbait headline to undermine the president of the United States, and that's why President Trump wrote this earlier. It's incredible how the fake news violently distorts the truth when it comes to me. There's nothing I could say or do that would lead them to write or report honestly about me. I had a great meeting in Alaska on Biden's stupid war, a war that should have never happened. Now, you guys want to hear something really stupid? Listen to former Vice President Mike Pence and his reaction to what happened in Alaska. Take a look.
Look, I served alongside the president for 4 years. I know his style in dealing with these dictators. It's the velvet glove, but I think the hammer needs to come, and it needs to come immediately. I think the president, as he welcomes President Zelensky to the Oval Office tomorrow, and a whole cast of our allies in Europe that are going to be joining him, I think at the same time he ought to pick up the phone and ask Majority Leader John Thune to immediately pass the secondary sanctions bill that is supported by virtually everyone in the United States Senate. I think the combination of engagement, but also making it clear to Putin that we are prepared to take actions that would literally break his economy, even while we redouble our commitment to the security of Ukraine and to working closely with our European allies is important.
Now, although the president did not respond to what Mike Pence had to say, he did put this up. If I got Russia to give up Moscow as part of the deal, the fake news and their partner, the radical left Democrats, would say I made a terrible mistake and a very bad deal. That's why they are fake news. Also, they should talk about the 6 wars, etc. I just stopped. Now, here's the thing about Mike Pence. Towards the end, you heard exactly what his position is. Let's try our best to cripple Russia and then plus up our funding into Ukraine. And that right there violates America First principles. So there's always going to be a fundamental difference between people like Mike Pence and people who support President Trump. And of course, my only thing to people who continue to criticize the president on this, especially the media pundits, why don't you survive multiple assassination attempts? Why don't you run an election where you were convicted of over 30 plus felony counts on a sham trial? Why don't you go win an election where 77 million American citizens voted for you? Why don't you pull off the ability to get someone like Putin into a room to look you in the eye and shake your hand? And so while they have all this criticism about the president, they are not able to show that they've done this before. So that's where I stand on this. Now let's go back to what Marco Rubio had to say. Take a listen.
Critics of President Trump will say the pomp and circumstance, the red carpet, the warm handshake, that President Trump simply lost that Putin gained there just by being on the world stage and walking down a red carpet with the president. Your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, critics of President Trump are always going to find something to criticize. You don't even pay attention to it anymore. But I will tell you this, Putin is already on the world stage. He's already on the world stage. The guy's conducting a full-scale war in Ukraine. He's already on the world stage. He has the world's largest tactical nuclear arsenal in the world and the second largest strategic nuclear arsenal in the world. He's already on the world stage. When I hear people say that, oh, it elevates him, well, all we do is talk about Putin all the time. All the media's done is talk about Putin all the time for the last 4 or 5 years. That doesn't mean he's right about the war. That doesn't mean he's justified about the war. Put all that aside. It means you're not going to have a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. You're not going to end a war between Russia and Ukraine without dealing with Putin. That's just common sense. I shouldn't even have to say it. So people can say whatever they want. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to get the Russian side to agree to things that they don't want to agree to if we're going to have peace. If not, there'll just be a war. They'll keep killing each other. And life will go on in America and in the rest of the world, but not for Ukraine. So the president has invested a lot of time in trying to bring an end to this war. He deserves credit for doing that. He gets criticism for doing that. He could have just let this war go on. The president could have just said, this is Biden's war. It started under him. We'll do what we can for Ukraine, but we're going to focus on other things. He could have easily said that.
Okay, so here's something personally you may not know about me. I do not like to eat processed foods, and I like to believe you don't either, which is why we partnered with today's sponsor, Masa Chips. Right here in front of me is the best and cleanest tortilla chips on the market you can buy. They only have 3 ingredients: organic corn, beef tallow, and salt. That's it. No more of that processed crap. And did you know grocery store chips have over 10 plus ingredients in them, including the healthier ones? Masa Chips comes in a few different flavors like lime, habanero, and churro, which is more like a dessert chip, and it's perfect for quenching that sweet tooth before bed. I could seriously eat an entire bag and not feel like crap after because of the clean ingredients. These are the chips you want your family to eat because they're guilt-free and everyone will love them. So use promo code DEVORE to get 25% off your Masa Chips today by using the link in the description below. All right, so that type of attitude from President Trump, the White House, and people like Marco Rubio is what I know frustrates people on the left. They can't stand the fact that President Trump is willing to walk away. And that's how negotiations should take place. If you want leverage, you should be able to walk away. You should always be willing to walk away. You should never be that attached to a deal. And anybody who's trained in negotiations knows that is a true reality. The best, that's what they do. Now, I'm not an expert on negotiations, of course. And so that's why I wouldn't spend any time necessarily criticizing President Trump when I'm not even in the room during these negotiations. But that's what the mainstream media is doing. And unfortunately, they're continuing to kill off whatever credibility is left, which I don't think is any. As you heard from President Trump, just stop watching the fake news. Okay, so let's go to the counterpoint to this, where CNN claims that this was a huge win for Putin and a major loss for President Trump. Here's why.
I think if you pull back a little bit, the other way that this summit was a win for Putin wasn't just that he got Trump to immediately back off the ceasefire. It wasn't just that he got Trump to forget about imposing sanctions. It's also that this whole time, going back even to the Biden presidency, when Biden kept talking about nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. This is everything about Ukraine without Ukraine. He has always wanted to sit down with the American president, the big boys, and carve up the world and carve up Ukraine. He has never thought that Ukraine should have a say in this. And now Trump seemingly agrees. He's going to go to Zelensky and ask him to formally buy into this deal. But he says, just agree to this, right? Just, we agreed, so you agree, right? We figured this out without you. Just sign on.
People are too obsessed with undermining President Trump to the point where I think they just make statements that are not really rooted in any reality. Just speak on the facts, the objective truths. The objective truths are Putin invaded Ukraine under former President Obama and under former President Biden. He did not invade Ukraine under President Trump. That's objective truth number one. Objective truth number two, Putin has only been willing to talk about some type of peace agreement with President Trump. So here's Marco Rubio having to school Martha Raddatz because she's obsessed with concessions, and she believes he should be sharing what those concessions, including secret details, to the public. Take a listen.
Can you name any concessions that Vladimir Putin made during this meeting? Have any
I wouldn't name them on your program.
Have any concessions
I wouldn't name
been
them
asked?
on your program. Why would I do that?
Where is the
Well,
pressure?
of course, because you can't have a peace agreement. No, you can't have a peace agreement unless both sides give and get. You can't have a peace agreement unless both sides make concessions. That's a fact. That's true in virtually any negotiation. If not, it's just called surrender. And neither side is going to surrender. So both sides are going to have to make concessions. So, of course, concessions were asked. But what utility would there be of me going on a program and tell you we've wagged our finger at Putin and told him you must do this and you must do that? It's only going to make it harder and less likely that they're going to agree to these things. So these negotiations, as much as everyone would love it to be a live pay-per-view event, these discussions only work best when they are conducted privately in serious negotiations in which people who have to go back and respond to constituencies, because even totalitarian governments have constituencies they have to respond to, people have to go back and defend these agreements that they make, and figure out a way to explain them to people. So we need to create space for concessions to be made. But of course, concessions were asked.
Yeah, so the big point for me when I listen to Marco Rubio and his explanation of things and the overall strategy from the Trump administration is this. If this war comes to an end, a peace agreement is reached, and all of the European leaders, including Zelensky and Putin, acknowledge that it was President Trump that made this happen, the Democrats and mainstream media are making a fatal mistake. I don't know why they believe it's smart to hedge their bets on the idea that this is not going to work, this is going nowhere, there will be zero chance of success. I mean, I think it's just a terrible bet for them because they've been wrong almost every single time about President Trump. They still don't understand why they lost the election. So, yeah, that's the thing that keeps coming to my mind when I hear the White House explain what they're doing, which sounds very clear to me, versus what mainstream media believes should be done. Okay, now here's an example of that fatal mistake coming from Senator Van Hollen, the gentleman who's in love with illegal aliens. Let's not forget that, and what he had to say about this. Take a listen.
I'd like to move to the summit, if you will. You're on the Foreign Relations Committee. You watched that summit, I'm sure. What is your reaction to what happened?
Well, Martha, there's no sugarcoating this. Donald Trump once again got played by Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin got the red carpet treatment on American soil, but we got no ceasefire. No imminent meeting between Putin and Zelensky. All the threatened sanctions that, Donald Trump talked about apparently have been set aside. Donald Trump got flattered by Vladimir Putin, but when it comes to Ukraine and our European allies, this was a setback. I do believe that Congress now, the Senate in particular, should move forward on bipartisan legislation that has over 60 senators as co-sponsors that would impose sanctions on Russia and Vladimir Putin.
And now let's pay attention to the language. We. See, Democrats look at Ukraine as if they are American citizens. They're not. Ukraine is not America, but they treat them as such. And that's not to be disrespectful, guys. That's just the reality. It's not Ukraine first. It's America first. Okay, that's the way that I see it. I believe that's exactly what it should be. Now, that doesn't mean we can't in some way, shape, or form facilitate or assist Ukraine in trying to get a peace agreement with Russia. But at the same time, we shouldn't be hedging our bets on it. We shouldn't be staking the form on it. And we definitely shouldn't be putting everything aside for this peace agreement. And unfortunately, Democrats, if they had their way, that's exactly what they would be doing. And we know that to be true because that's what they did under Biden. They took their eye off the most important thing. Take care of the American citizen. They didn't do that. They took care of illegal aliens crossing the border, giving them $10,000 worth of stipends while our veterans were homeless on the streets. I mean, that's who we're talking about. Okay, let's hear another delusional statement. This one is coming from Senator Chris Murphy. Take a listen.
Do you think that it's the right strategy to now focus on that broader peace deal? That meeting was a disaster. It was an embarrassment for the United States. It was a failure. Putin got everything he wanted. I mean, first of all, he wanted that photo op, right? He wanted to be absolved of his war crimes in front of the world. He was invited to the United States. War criminals are not normally invited to the United States of America. He is intentionally murdering civilians. He's kidnapping children. And now he got to stand next to the president of the United States, legitimized in the view of the world.
Okay, so let me ask you guys a serious question. And I really mean this, especially for the people who love history. Which country do you think is the biggest threat to America, Russia or China? Please answer that first. Second question, based on that answer, do you believe China has been treated better than Russia, or do you believe Russia has been treated better than China? Think about how many times the Chinese president has visited America. Think about how many times Putin has come to America as you factor that into your answer. Okay, please put that in the comment section. Because when I hear what Senator Chris Murphy is talking about is that finally there was a meeting between President Trump in person, not over a phone call, not through their subordinates, but the top dogs actually having a conversation. Even if there was no agreement, a conversation happened. That is very important, especially in a high stakes negotiation. Sometimes you have a meeting because you just have to have one to inch a little closer, not the actual meeting to close. But, it's almost like you're arguing with idiots because even if you say that, it doesn't matter to them because they only see it one way. And again, I only brought up the China comparison because I would argue that China is the biggest threat, but they've been treated very nicely in comparison to Putin. Just look at the language we've been using. Look at how much Democrats freaked out when President Trump wanted to increase tariffs on China. So I find it interesting how they have it all backwards, in my opinion. Okay, so let's go to our next story, because speaking of having things backwards, the National Guard has been deployed to Washington, D.C., and you've got to see the reaction of people on the ground, including the media pundits. But first, let's see exactly what this looks like. Take a look.
3 states agreeing to send hundreds of members from their National Guard to Washington, D.C. This is all part of Trump's larger effort to crack down on the crime in the nation's capital. In total, over 600 guardsmen have been pledged on top of the 800 already activated. This comes as hundreds took to the streets of D.C. Saturday, protesting the militarization of law enforcement and the Trump administration's mass deportation efforts.
Now, here's a serious question. Why didn't liberals freak out over Tim Walz using the National Guard to keep people locked up during COVID? I know you guys remember that, right? Again, it's always been a double standard. I don't think at this point it's worth complaining about. It's just worth pointing out because I think people are becoming more politically aware and they need this information so they understand what's going on here. The backlash, the meltdown, the continuous criticism of what President Trump is doing to keep streets safe in Washington, D.C., most of it is just emotional noise. None of it is actually rooted in intellect and actual sound arguments on why this is a bad thing. I haven't been able to hear one yet. However, what I have been able to see are the positive results DC has been able to experience so far because of the increased presence of law enforcement and now the National Guard, which takes me to this next clip because here's the heart of the matter. DC is predominantly African American. So Jeanine Pirro sat down with an interview with Laura Trump last night, and she made a shocking announcement, and I have to react to it. Take a listen.
President Trump understands that in D.C., it is the minority community that is suffering. Just the other day, I said, give me a picture of all of the teens, everyone 19 and under, who were killed by gunfire. Okay, and in 2024, there were 29 of them, all teens killed by gunfire. 2025, so far, there are 19, all teens killed by gunfire. Every one of them African American, every one of them minority community. And I'm going to stun you. 70% of these homicides of 45 young minority kids in the last year and 7 months have not been solved. The ones who shot and killed them and took their lives from them are still walking the streets. We haven't arrested them. We haven't taken the guns from them. And that's what the president understands. And that's my mission.
Okay, so let's talk about the brutal truth. And it's a truth that I would argue some people in the black community refuse to acknowledge. They say Black Lives Matter, but I don't hear anybody losing their mind over this, right? So 24 shot and killed black Americans. Where is Black Lives Matter on this? Where's Al Sharpton and the NAACP, right? And all the other people who claim that black American lives matter, right? They go silent on this stuff. See, when they believe President Trump is doing something that either hinders black people, which I've yet to find that to be true, they lose all comprehension. But when there's actual legitimate lives being shot and killed in the streets of D.C., and these are kids that are young, supposed to be adults one day, raising families, being leaders in our communities, that'll never happen for them. They're gone. But they have nothing to say about it. I wonder why that is. I'm just so curious about that. We spend all this time talking about the white man, but we have nothing to say when it comes to our own black children being murdered in the streets. And most of the time, it's by the hands of other black people. Okay, let me stop.
West Virginia has pledged 300 to 400 guardsmen. South Carolina stepping in with 200, and Ohio also announcing 150, marking a significant escalation in the federal response. Military vehicles are now being seen in D.C. streets, guardsmen patrolling landmarks like Union Station and the National Mall. And for the first time in this deployment, National Guard units may soon be seen carrying weapons while operating in the city. All of this coming days after President Trump federalized control of the Metro Police, a move that's drawing sharp pushback from the public, local officials, and Democrats on Capitol Hill. We're going to be watching closely to see if other states follow suit and whether the White House responds to the growing outcry. But Henna, I think it's interesting that these states volunteered this gesture here, and I will be curious to see how many more are going to do that.
I would hope they would continue to volunteer because, quite frankly, there should be no confrontation here with anybody. If there is going to be a confrontation, it would actually be between the criminals and law enforcement. So these people who might be peacefully protesting this, fine, go ahead. That's their own right to do so. But the bottom line is this. In your heart of hearts, you know you would rather have streets that are safe, that are vacant from crime, that you're not seeing the drugs on the corner or the homeless sleeping on the corner or people getting their car jacked or robbed or murdered or killed. No one wants to see any of that. And I'm telling you, the people who have experienced it, you don't hear them complaining. In fact, you hear gratitude from them. It's the people who say they're educated with the fancy degrees and know better than me and you that say this is a problem. It's fascinating the way that is, right? Okay, this is what MSNBC, particularly Jamal Bowman, the guy who obviously got kicked out of Congress. Well, he lost his election for obvious reasons for pulling the fire alarm in order to stop a vote. I think that tells you who he is, right, and his character. But hey, he has a reaction to this. Take a listen.
So if the president is really serious about dealing with violent crime, like now in certain areas, again, one murder, one violent crime, too many. Yeah. So let's use a scalpel. Let's be strategic. Let's go into those communities with people who are from those communities to help with the issue of violent crime. But the president's not serious. He wants to be a dictator. He likes seeing military personnel on the streets of D.C. because it makes him feel powerful because he's actually a small person.
Yeah, so this is my question for Jamal Bowman. The scalpel that you suggested the president should be using, is that the same one you guys have been using? Is it the same one the mayor had been using? Is the same one Brandon Johnson out of Chicago has been using, and Karen Bass, or Eric Adams for that matter, okay? Because last time I checked, that scalpel doesn't work. And that's the fundamental issue they have when they try to push back on this. Is like, hey, guys, whatever strategy you say the President Trump should be executing is a failed strategy already. But it's not going to stop them from trying to push that. But the good news is the president is already getting results, and the people in D.C. are already thanking him.
The sigh of relief that I have seen from the local communities in this city, you see people going online saying, for the first time that I can remember, I don't hear gunshots ringing out at night anymore. I just saw a video posted by a gentleman who walked from his neighborhood in the southeast all the way to the White House, and he said in the whole way through, He saw no gang members, no violence, no homeless camps, no public drug use. He said it was like living in a different city. President Trump is making D.C. safe, livable, clean, and secure, not just for the people who live here, but for every American citizen whose birthright is to visit our nation's capital.
Yeah, let's hear from you guys in the comment section. I mean, why is it when it comes to crime, no one has anything to say when black people are killing black people in the streets? No one has anything to say when black children are being murdered every day in a city like Chicago, in a city like Washington, D.C. Everybody's silent. But as soon as President Trump deploys the National Guard, they lose all comprehension. They lose consciousness. Why is that? Can you guys answer that in the comment section for me? Secondly, what's your reaction to what Marco Rubio had to say? I find it so interesting that the people who screaming the loudest have never negotiated a peace agreement, have never negotiated a trade deal, have never been the president of the United States. Isn't it fascinating? They all think they know better than the president. They've never won an election where 77 American people voted for them. Now, that doesn't mean you have to win an election and have credibility on this issue, but the loudest people in the room, they've never done any of this. They don't have any credibility on this issue. So let me know if you guys see it the same way. Just put all your thoughts about this entire video in the comment section below. Now, speaking of a lack of credibility, in our next video, CNN brought on a body language expert, and he talked about what happened between Putin and Trump. And let me just say this right now. His analysis completely obliterates all of the critics. So if you missed out on that story and more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.